tester's career journey. Today we're going to talk about the test strategy. Hopefully you can learn some tips that will help you develop a strategy that will work for your team. Now, this term strategy it's got a lot of historical connotations, often associated with military or winning a battle. When people think of strategy, they often talk about their tactics, which is just one part of their overall strategy. Sun Tzu has got an interesting quote on strategy. Strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before the defeat. And there's this book that I've read called I Have a Strategy, No You Don't, that is an illustrated guide on exploring what this term strategy is. It's a really light book and I really enjoyed reading it. But it might be too light for you. That's one of the criticisms of this book. But according to this book, I Have a Strategy, there are 4 parts to a strategy. A strategy has to have a purpose, a measurable goal, a plan, and a sequence of actions or tactics. So I'm going to start with a purpose. If I was dumped into a new team tomorrow, I might actually start by interviewing a couple of people about what does quality mean to you? What are some of the common problems in the testing process here? If you could fix just one thing about our quality, what would it be? So I would use that to develop a bit of a purpose and then develop some sort of plan or action towards that purpose to help achieve some improvement in quality. And maybe after a certain iteration, I would re-interview those same people just to see if the perceived quality had actually been improved. Did my strategy achieve what I'd actually set out to do? Now, different people are going to answer these questions differently as well. Developers might say that test coverage and easy deployments is a high quality product. Your project manager might say happy customers is a high quality product. And your testers might say that if there's less bugs found in the test phase, it's a high quality product as well. So work towards a goal. I'm going to walk through a sample mobile app test strategy that has worked well in my team, and it might not necessarily work for your team, but I'm just going to walk you through the process we have here. So just to build up a little bit of context, in my team we follow a 2-week sprint cycle. My team has an Android developer, an iOS developer, a couple of back-end engineers, a few testers, we've got a few business analysts, a project manager, and there's a few other people who are generally involved with the team. There's an architect as well and whatnot. But we tend to follow this 2-weekly sprint cycle, just to give you a little bit of context of how my team works. We've got a couple of designers that work with our team, and I think the whole point of testing is to get feedback, to help answer the question, are we happy or are we comfortable releasing this software to our customers? So our designers have their own testing approach. They might go through wireframing or prototyping, some user testing, user research, and they might help us come up with design and user stories to help drive our development. Now, I mostly work in the code review, the code feedback loop, and there's a whole bunch of things that's part of our strategy here. We might do some chaos or crash testing. I might be involved with the code review process. We might flesh out some of our UI automation or look into unit testing or do exploratory testing for every new feature that comes through our pipeline. We could also expand out our contract testing for our backend or enhance our test environment or test data as well. We have the layer 3, the supporting the ship. When we deliver our code, we might do a whole bunch of other things to help find out features and bugs. So we might do a bug bash once every 2 to 3 months, where we get everyone together, organize some snacks, and try to get everyone to try and find as many bugs as possible before we release a couple of new features to customers. It's a really fun exercise. I do enjoy trying a bug bash within your team at some point, but you can also overdo them too. We might do an internal release to some of our customers in the company. We might also do beta releases to customers who have said they want new features first. You could also do percentage rollouts too to help you get that feedback. Both the Android and Apple Play Stores both support percentage rollouts. So you could, for example, deploy your app to 5% of the market and monitor for crash rates. Then there's also supporting the product feedback loop. Customers will raise feedback, so that's monitoring for the App Store reviews, and you could do some other exercises around there as well. Also, how do you get back to customers when they do raise feedback too is a really important part of a high quality product. I also have a social media marketing strategy. I find it easier to talk about marketing strategies than I do about test strategies, but I think that's because marketing is more tangible. Software testing is a bit more nebulous. It's a little bit harder to understand. It's also harder to measure if you're improving anything. Because quality has so many broad definitions, it's a lot harder to also get everyone on the same page when it comes to a test strategy. Whereas marketing is all about views and click-throughs and whatever else you want it to be about. I find it easier to develop a marketing strategy than I do to develop a test strategy. A good part of a test strategy is having a section for risks and gaps. It's, I think, useful for developing the context and the scope of your test strategy. So for example, you might say that, well, this test strategy doesn't incorporate things like performance testing or security testing, just to help get everyone up on the same page. If you want a framework to help you get started with UI automation, I have this visual risk-based framework that you can use. So the premise is that you'll draw a little graph. On your x-axis, you'll draw frequency of use, and on your y-axis, impact on the customer if it's broken. And then you break this up into 3 sections. One section you give 3 stars. These are really important features. You might want to automate these features first and then measure your progress as part of your strategy. You give some sections 2 stars. These are important features, but maybe you don't start automating these ones first, and some features might be 1 star. And then you list out all of your features and you map them to this map. So for example, registration has a really high impact if it's broken, but has a fairly low frequency of use. Whereas your login is probably your most used feature. You probably want to build out some automation along your login, because that's a common flow that happens and should probably be one of your most tested features too. Then you also want to measure the impact that you're having. So for example, a mobile app that I'm working on, we monitor the average App Store reviews to measure for happy customers. We also monitor for how many locked accounts. That's good for measuring if a feature is easy to do or not. If there are people who are falling off the registration process, maybe it's too hard. So that's one way you can measure the usability of your features, is how many people succeed in that feature too. You could also monitor for crash rates for mobile apps. This is a really good metric for monitoring the quality of your app too. And I have this other blog post for measuring the impact from a marketing strategy point of view. It's a reflection on some of the tools that I use to help me monitor and all of the analytics that come with things like WordPress and LinkedIn to help measure that engagement. And I really like doing a deep dive into analytics. It's stuff that's my jam. I love analytics. Anyway, that's the summary of my test strategy video. How do you measure your impact, and how have you learnt to develop a test strategy? What's worked for you? I'd love to hear your stories. Thank you.